Welcome and thank you for tuning in to the 412 Double Play podcast. I am, as always, your host, Michael Castrogano, back on the show. Joining me this week to talk prospects, writer for Bucs On Deck Substack, Anthony Murphy. Murph, welcome back. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Glad to finally get a chance to come back on here with you.
Yeah, always appreciate having you on. Last time we talked about Greensboro and expectations for the season ahead with the Grasshoppers last spring training, I think. So I think I've got a number of players today who have at least spent some time in Greensboro, and I know that's a team you get to see maybe more than the others, but I'm loving that you're keeping with the Bradenton hat.
Oh yeah, that's the go-to thing right now.
If you guys are watching on video, that the Marauders with the gold B is my favorite of all the farm team logos.
Yeah. Oh yeah, by far.
All right, so looking back at this week, it was a busy week for baseball and the Pirates. Big news for Pirates fans, obviously, the signing of flamethrowing lefty reliever Aroldis Chapman returns to the NL Central after winning the World Series with the Texas Rangers and fellow Pirate Martin Perez. So Chapman signed to a one-year deal, $10.5 million, highest free agent signing of Cherington's tenure so far. 3.09 ERA, 58.1 innings last year between Kansas City and the Rangers. Still posting elite velocity, strikeout rates, controls a bit iffy. It's always been a bit iffy. Murph, you wrote about what Chapman brings to the team with Bucs On Deck. Is he worth the amount that they're paying for him and the expectations, given that he is theoretically just stepping into a setup role?
I think a way that you can look at it also is what he does to help David Bednar as well, as far as taking a little bit pressure off of him, to where we won't have to see as many back-to-back save nights, even like the rare back-to-back kind of games. We can take some pressure off the arm, and hopefully there isn't as Bednar's had a couple of those hiccup stints and stuff like that, to where you could tell he's a little bit gassed and whatnot. So I think maybe it's kind of, for the position the Pirates are in, kind of weird to sign a reliever for $10.5 million when he's not going to be your closer. But when you think about what else he can provide as far as depth and experience and stuff like that, I mean, on the baseball side of things, I don't think you can really argue this as a bad signing for it. I think it really does help the depth and experience factor as well.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing, and you hit on it, was that Chapman has experience closing games. He can close games so that Bednar doesn't need to go 2, 3, 4 games in a row. Holderman has closed games before. Doesn't have nearly as much experience as the other two, but that's 3 pretty well above average back-end relievers that they have there in that 7, 8, 9 spot. So as far as solidifying it, the hope, obviously, that they add to the rotation, possibly, a center fielder or something like that. But like, the bullpen is looking like one of the best in baseball. We saw, I think it was the Cubs signed Hector Neris either today or yesterday, and that was like $9 million. And he's not, even close to the quality, in my mind, as Chapman, who had like a 33% strikeout rate last year. Something like that. It was like second best, second best behind Felice Bautista of the Orioles. So it's definitely a big signing, big swing. So if
came way out of left field there with it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And this is kind of going to go off topic, but everyone's like, oh, this rumor about the Pirates being connected to, this past week, Michael Lorenzen, which has been talked about a lot, Noah Syndergaard, which is a new one. And everyone's like, oh, are they going to? I have never had, in my memory with Cherington, a signing that happened that rumors were like occurring regularly leading up to it. Like, Kutch came out of left field. Martin Perez came out of left field. Chapman, obviously. Kutch the first time, not this past time. This past time, everybody knew. But that was a different kind of secret. So
yeah. So I guess if it's a rumor, then just throw it out the window.
It's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
So on the more national stage this past week, Hall of Fame class of 2024 announced, joining former Bucs skipper Jim Leyland in Cooperstown Adrian Beltre, Joe Mauer, Todd Helton. Hearing those names for me brings back a lot of nostalgia from being a kid, trying to draft them in my fantasy leagues. A number of players, though, on the ballot who I also liked when I played fantasy back in like high school fell short of the 75% required for entry. Obviously, guys like Gary Sheffield, it was last year on the ballot. Billy Wagner just fell short on his 9th year. So, Murph, you and I, obviously not members of the Baseball Writers Association of America, but if you were, do you feel like the voting process and entrance to the hall have been valid? Is there anything that you think is, if you are able to speak freely about how you feel on that, the voting process and how people vote?
The only thing that I don't like, and I don't know how much it's still a thing, but like you hear the talk about, is he a first ballot Hall of Famer? Is he, is he gonna have to wait a couple years? Like to me, I feel like what changes in that standpoint? Like I mean, if he's a Hall of Famer now, if he's a Hall of Famer when he retired, like there isn't going to be any difference in it down the road. So the whole thing with like some writers supposedly like not voting for people on the first ballot just as a thing that's done. I'm not an overly big fan of that. I kind of feel like if he's a Hall of Famer, put him in. If you're making like if it's a legit debate that you're having kind of back and forth, then something's changed or you've heard like a specific argument as to why they should get in, and then you change your vote over the next couple of years. I mean, that's one thing, but to kind of like withhold a vote from someone just because like that's the big thing that I'm not a fan of. And also like it does feel like maybe there's some writers who still have votes that haven't covered the game in some time. And I kind of think that's like there should be some sort of requirement. You should have to cover the team or cover a team or cover the sport or something like that regularly to be able to vote. That's my big thing with it.
Yeah, definitely a lot of old man ballots coming out. And
Yeah.
I saw one guy, he said he's only voting for Manny Ramirez and Alex Rodriguez. Those were his two. I don't think he like had his ballot public, and I don't remember who it was off the top of my head. But I was like, I mean, those two are great, but like those two and not Beltre, those two and not Andrew Jones, like it's just, I don't know. It's weird how guys end up in the hall over some other, like, also not always equally, but also admirable picks. And the whole steroid thing, I mean, who knows how they're going to handle that long term.
I get that part of it. It's just, I think with the way that a lot of the stuff is worded, it is like leaves too much open for interpretation, and that maybe some people can use that openness with how the stuff is worded to kind of take it in that direction like you're talking about. So I think maybe if there's a way to kind of come together and come up with like a concrete wording in how the process is done, I think we could kind of eliminate a lot of that stuff with it.
Yeah. And hopefully they figure something out with that. But I think more to your point, the old men who are no longer covering the game and don't vote, don't like submitting blank ballots, that's frustrating.
Yeah.
So getting more into your wheelhouse, this past week we've been getting tidbits of top prospects at each given position. Pirates had top right-handed pitcher Paul Skeens, top second baseman in Tamar Johnson, and fifth best left-handed pitching prospect in Anthony Solomito. Top 100 prospect list dropped Friday night. Pirates came out with 5, tied for third most behind the Cubs, who had 7. Orioles had 6. I think we're tied with the Reds and Padres. Also both had 5. Maybe it might not have been. I think it was the Padres. Yeah. So Bubba Chandler at 90. Yeah. Bubba Chandler at 93. Solomito at 82. Jared Jones at 62. Tamar Johnson, 44. Paul Skeens at number 3. So were you surprised with the order or position for these prospects?
I can, like, if you're talking about order of like the Pirates in general, I can kind of see it. That's the kind of order that I expected. I kind of expected those 5 to go in order. I was kind of up in the air as whether or not like Bubba Chandler would be on the list initially. I mean, like obviously he closed the season really well, and I've been really high on him and stuff like that. I just didn't know. I couldn't get a feel of where like Pipeline felt on him, so I wasn't sure if he was going to be like towards the end of the list or if he was going to be like one of the first people cut off. But obviously he made the list. I know Pirates fans they love their Paul Skeens and all that already. I thought 3 was a little high for him based off of like some of the other names that are up there. I mean, he was higher than Evan Carter, who did really well. He was batting in the middle of the order for the World Series champion Texas Rangers. We saw how good Wyatt Langford did. It was just a little shock. I mean, he's the top right-handed pitching prospect in the game, and Pipeline has been higher on him than any other of the prospect sites and stuff like that. So I guess with Pipeline, it probably wasn't that much of a surprise, but it was probably higher than where I would put him.
And he was the top pitching prospect by a wide margin because the next highest
one was like the 20s.
25, I want to say, with Kyle Harrison.
Yeah.
And he's left-handed hit pitcher, so I don't know when the next right-handed pitcher was, but like they are really high on him.
Oh yeah, they gave him an 80 grade fastball. Pipeline loves them some Paul Skeens, which I know Pirates fans love. But they love them some Paul Skeens there.
Pirates fans, I'll say general Pirates fans love Paul Skeens. I feel like based on conversations I've had with you, I know you were on NS9 last week or a week and a half ago. For you, who do you think has a long-term better career between the 3 top right-handed pitchers for the Pirates? Jared Jones, Paul Skeens, or Bubba Chandler?
I think you could probably, if you want to play the safe game, obviously the answer is Paul Skeens. I think where the advantage that he has obviously is that, he's coming out of college. He's a lot more advanced. I think I've been harder on him than others when it comes to like the fastball stuff and everything like that, as far as the shape and everything like that. But if you can go out there and locate 98 miles an hour on the dot consistently, then you're gonna 98 to 100. Yeah, obviously, like we've seen him hit top 100 like a lot. So if you could do that and hit your spots and all that stuff, that helps cover up for a lack of a fastball shape and that kind of stuff. It's where he starts missing, and if the hitters can catch up to. I mean, we see Hunter Green threw more 100-mile-an-hour fastballs than anyone in baseball last year, and he still got beat up pretty hard. That's where the location comes into the factor. I would say Skeens has better command of the fastball than Hunter Green does. But I think if you want to play it safe, I'd have no problem, and I wouldn't argue too hard if you wanted to say that Skeens probably could have a better career than them. I think Bubba Chandler has just as much upside as he does. There's still going to be some questions there as far as like the secondary stuff and how if he can consistently stay with the control like he did towards the end of last year. But I'm pretty sure I said it on NS9 when I was on there, and I know I've written this before. I think that the gap between Bubba Chandler and Paul Skeens is a lot closer than people recognize, or maybe, I don't know, I don't want to say willing to admit, but I think it's a lot closer than a lot of people will say. And if there's a guy that, if Skeens slips and isn't quite what everyone thought he was, I very much can easily see it to where like Bubba Chandler has the better career of the 3 of them.
Okay. So. Now, and obviously, because those are going to be in my top 10, we're not going to be talking about them this week on the list. So I just wanted to talk about them now, because otherwise, I don't know when I'll be able to see you, have you on, talk about them again. Where does Jared Jones fit into that conversation, and how high is the risk that he ends up, because of the control issues, ends up as a bullpen arm?
So the biggest, I went and I got a chance to see Jared Jones pitch in Richmond last year, and this stuff is electric. Like it's as advertised in person. And he did really well down the stretch. It took him a while to kind of figure out AAA, but his last couple of starts looked really good. The concern that I have about the last couple of starts was he really started to ditch the secondary stuff, and he became almost effectively just a fastball slider guy. And like I know, like some guys can get away with that in the majors. I feel like the guys who can do that in the majors are more the exception than anything else. So if he puts a focus on that secondary stuff going into next year, like we know the fastball and sliders there. If he goes out and strikes out a bunch of people right off the bat with the fastball, I mean, people like that because they'll see the strikeout numbers. But really, if those secondary stuff can come, he can very much be like a very good starting pitcher. It's just the stuff when you look at it, it just kind of screams reliever, and he has a little bit of a smaller build, so you don't know if he can hold up to an entire season. He's pitched 130, 140 innings, I think, each in the last couple of years. So he's already stretched out further than you can probably anyone else in the minors that would be coming up next year. It's just how much is that secondary stuff going to play for him at the next level? Is he going to be able to command it and control it and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So he's definitely a top arm and possibly someone who we see earlier than Skeens in 2024. Hopefully he's ready when that happens, but I'll be talking about him when we do the top 10 piece. We're doing 30 through 21, so let's get to that main part of the show. This is definitely going to take the longest, so I'm glad we pretty much flew through that first part. Top prospects, 30 through 21. This is the third time that I've done this on the show. Typically, Ed and I make a list each, compare them. However, given that we have the opportunity to talk with people who are more closely following the prospects, felt like it was in everyone's best interest for me to be able to pitch a name, give my thoughts on them, and then to have the guest of the week basically rip it apart or potentially praise it. Never know. Maybe I guess right on these 30 through 21. It's a mystery. It's a lot of projection because these are going to be a lot of guys that are further down the list as far as like where they are in the farm system. So let's jump right into it. The first name I've got on this list is number 30, Josiah Seitler, listed as a first baseman and a DH, 15th round pick in 2022 out of University of South Carolina, 24 years old, listed at 6'3", 234. I think USC had him at like closer to 6'4", 6'5", something like that when I looked it up. So last year, 2023 was his first pro action, played complex league, low A, high A, triple slash between those three levels, 311, 383, 526, 14 home runs in just 228 at-bats over 60 games. But they're kind of inflated because in Bradenton, he had a 1.454 OPS over his 18-game span there, mostly younger competition. But as much as I hate to use the old school scout terms, the ball really explodes off his bat when you watch video of him on YouTube. He really, when he gets behind the ball, the outfielder doesn't even turn around. So limited defensively, obviously only being first base or DH, needs to cut down on strikeouts. I think 28.7% during his time at Greensboro. But the power, in my mind, plays. So I'm going to ask you, is his production at Bradenton replicable as he moves up the ranks, or was that a flash in the pan against inferior competition?
So I think the biggest thing that's going to come with Seitler is the contact issues. There's a lot of swing and miss there. You can even he still hit the ball really well, obviously in Bradenton. You can see a little bit of it there kind of pop up now and again, especially against like the off speed and breaking pitches. There's a little swing and miss there. He got exposed a little bit more once he got into Greensboro with it. So with him, it's the power's legit. If I remember correctly, his 95th percentile exit velocity was like second best in the system of all players that we were able to track as far as exit velocity numbers. I think like only Mason Martin had a higher 95th the percentile exit velocity. So, and we all know Mason Martin as far as when it comes to power. There
Yeah,
isn't many
I don't
better
love
than
that
him in the
comp.
minors. Yeah.
Yeah, he was all or nothing.
Yeah. So there is a
whole
lot of
time.
that kind of risk with Seidler. I will say that he was a two-way player in college. He did pitch. So there is a lot of upside with the arm. I have seen some places throw out the possibility of him playing in like right field next year or this year coming up. He had Tommy John surgery the previous year. That's why he didn't throw, and that's why he was limited, and that's why he got such a late start into the last year. That's why he didn't play as much. So that was a big part why he only played first. So as he gets back and healthy and all that, I have seen it tossed out there that he might play in the outfield. So that would be something to watch and would expand the versatility and the value a little bit on him. But for him, it really comes down to the swing and miss. If as he moves up the ladder, that becomes more prevalent. Obviously, he's a little bit more limited. If he can make those adjustments and stuff like that, I mean, the power is legit. I mean, it doesn't matter what kind of competition you're facing. If you're hitting the ball 110 miles an hour off the bat, I mean, that plays everywhere. So,
do you think that he starts at Greensboro for 2024?
I can see a scenario where he starts in Greensboro again. He didn't play. He wasn't there that long, and he did struggle a little bit there. I don't know if he was 100% healthy. Like, you always have to take that into the risk factor into consideration, especially how late of a season he got. So I wouldn't be surprised he started in Greensboro. And maybe they give him the quick push up to Altoona at some point mid-season. But Greensboro seems like a good starting point for him.
The power is definitely going to play there more than anything else.
Oh, yeah. He'll be fun to watch. He'll be fun to watch in Greensboro. So,
yeah. All right. So moving on to number 29, favorite of mine and yours, Carlos Jimenez, right-handed pitcher, international free agent signing from 2018. Guy I've really liked over the years. Jimenez, he had some injury issues last season, only pitched a total of 13 innings, 7 games between Complex and Bradenton, 2.08 ERA with 21 strikeouts in that time, but had a 1.54 whip, in part due to 15 walks issued. Only 21, one of the better changeups of the system. I'm sure you'll talk about that. Upper 70s curve, fastball that has reached 97. Long-term potential for bullpen due to these control issues. You and I have talked about our mutual fondness for Jimenez in the past. Where does he go from here?
I think Jimenez is probably, like, obviously, like, he's been a favorite of mine for a couple years now since I first watched him in Bradenton. He may have the most extreme variance of like any pitcher in the system right now, because he seems like a guy, like, if the control just kind of clicks, he's a starting pitcher in the major leagues and probably a good one. He has potentially three average to above average pitches at least. Also, his control right now is a 20 and a 20 on like the 20 to 80 grade. Like,
yep.
There's also a very good chance he doesn't make it out of A ball with that control. So, I mean, going from potential average major league starter to like A ball pitcher, that's kind of still where you're at with him with that. If it clicks, and I saw some of him pitch in instructionals after the season, and like the fastball and curveball looked really good. Like, you saw the control things a little, obviously the control thing there, but in the couple innings that I did see from him there, it looked pretty good. So this year will be a really big year for him. He pretty much lost all of last year. So like he's kind of young for his level kind of thing. You could almost make an argument that it may do him some good to start him back in Bradenton again, just to kind of get him the feel of going, just to build some momentum and stuff like that. Also, he's the kind of guy that could probably get beat up pretty bad in Greensboro, so maybe you want to limit his exposure there. So he's a fun pitcher to watch when it's on, and I do like the recordings for like my YouTube channel with him. Sometimes a single inning that he pitches takes forever to get recorded and doing it, because it's 3 walks, 3 strikeouts kind of innings. So
Yeah. I was watching a lot of your YouTube clips in prepping for this, just because I would just search on YouTube and yours would come up, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's good. So if you guys aren't subscribed already, what is it? Anthony Murphy,
I'm not even sure. I
388.
don't even. Yeah, something like
I
that.
have it.
Yeah, it's
I have it written down
one
here
of the
somewhere.
default one that YouTube gave me.
Yeah, 338. Anthony Murphy 338 is what I've written down for it. So yeah. So with Jimenez, though, is it a repeatability issue with his windup? Is it just like not being able to grip the ball? And I know, like, you're not scout, you're not professionally training pitchers, but like, what is like the vibe that is the issue with him having these control problems? 20 grade
it,
is
it does
really bad.
it does kind of seem like, especially back when you go back and watch the video from him in Bradenton in 2022. There's a lot of movement going on in the delivery. There's a little bit like of a violent finish to it, where it kind of maybe gets a little bit herky jerky. So that, I guess, that could have helped. That could have hurt with the repeatability and stuff like that. What I will say about his stint in instructionals that I saw, it looked like he was going more out of the stretch, like full time, to maybe try to, you know, calm that down and stuff like that. It's something we partially saw from like Jared Jones as well. He had more of like an overhead and everything was moving and stuff like that, and they kind of cut it down and broke it up into two pieces, and that really helped with them. So that could be something they're trying to do with Jimenez as well. So, but it seemed like it was just like a repeatability issue with it, because some stuff would be perfect, and then the next thing would just be anyone's guess as to where it was going.
Well, hopefully he figures it out. I think this is the third year maybe he's on my list, probably around the same range just because of the control issues.
Mm-hmm.
But next guy on my list, I think, has been in the same exact spot 3 straight years, and that's Po-Yu Chen, right-handed pitcher, another international signing, kind of a trend for this week's episode, actually. Chen was inked out of Taiwan July 2019, steadily moved up the ranks. Spent all of 2023 high A Greensboro, notoriously hitter-friendly park, 4.44 ERA over 119.2 innings, 124 strikeouts, 43 walks. Outside of a rough couple of games in the beginning and then a couple of games at the end, like the middle part, he was grade A grinder. May 11th through July 22nd, he pitched 11 games, going at least 5 innings in each, and a 3.06 ERA in that span, 68 strikeouts to 23 walks over 70.2 innings. Like most pitchers in Greensboro, got hit with the home run bug. Mentioned it's a home run park. He allowed 21 over the course of the season. I think 12 of them, or 13, were at home. Doesn't have overpowering velocity, like low 90s, but he's got tenacity, is how I put it. Intriguing pitch mix. As I mentioned, you've got more video of Chen than anyone. So, is there something else there with Chen besides these like mid 4.4 ERA that he pretty much puts up every year at every level?
I mean, there are a lot of people who I think like Chen a little bit more than I do. I think the like initial reports that we got on him, that we saw like more like mid 90, we were hearing like more mid 90s fastball. And when I first saw him pitch, it was like high 80s, low 90s. So it's kind of like, okay, well, where was the disconnect there? And then we saw him full season in Bradenton, and it ticked up a little bit. I mean, it's just not over. Like I had a chance to see Chen as well in Greensboro. The fastball just isn't that impressive. And, you know, like we talked a little bit about like the shape and everything like that with Skeens. Like I always like to put it, like you can have a bad shape on your fastball if you have a lot of velocity and you're placing it, or you can have like lower velocity and good pitch shape. Is someone like Thomas Harrington, he's like averages 92, 93, but his fastball metrics are like off the charts.
Yep.
But you can't have low velocity and bad fastball shape, and that, because that's just like you're just kind of asking for trouble. And we saw like the problems Quinn Priester had in the majors last year. A lot of that was due to low velocity and bad pitch shape. And I kind of feel like Chen's kind of in that same boat with it. It's the shape numbers and stuff like that aren't overly great, and the velocity isn't either. But like the thing that plays in this factor is he can mix in it's like 5 or 6 pitches. Like the splitter is incredible. He has a curveball that's big looping old school kind of curveball, slider, cutter. He can use all of them in almost any count. So like if you want to give him like the upside of like a back of the rotation starter, I can probably see that because he can go out there and throw 5, 6, 7 different kind of pitches on any given night. I just like I'm less higher on him than I think others are. I think he's a really solid pitcher, and he pitched really well down the stretch. It's just I think the upside is just a little bit more limited on someone like Chen than others.
So with someone who has that kind of pitch mix, and we're seeing a lot of obviously we've got some good fastballs in the system. We mentioned before it's Skeens, Jared Jones, Chandler. How important is it to have a strong fastball to work off of if he has like a really good splitter, a really good curve, like all these other off speed and breaking pitches, which notoriously, hitters are going to have a harder time with because they're so used to the fastballs, which is the majority pitch. Is it still much more important?
Yeah, you still like even for someone like Chen who could throw like all those different kind of like off speed and breaking pitches and everything like that. Like the game I saw in Greensboro, they didn't bite on the curveball, and if it's or the slider, they weren't biting on anything else. And so if he has to throw the fastball in the zone, or if he's having too much issue on a given night locating that kind of the other pitches, then it's just you got to have the fastball command there. You got to have the ability to make them miss or at least have them put the ball in play in the dirt. So yeah, it's nice to have those pitches, but I think fastball and fastball command is still one of the most crucial factors with any kind of pitcher, no matter what kind of pitch arsenal you're dealing with on there. So
yeah, it definitely seems like it sets the framework for the rest of their stuff to kind of slow down, change eye level from. So we're going to pivot from pitchers with number 27, which is another international signing, but a trade deadline piece from last year. And that's Johnny Severino, listed for third base and shortstop. Probably just going to be third base going forward. He was acquired as part of the trade, sending Carlos Santana to division rival Brewers last year. International signing just 2 years ago. He's only 19, listed at 6'1", 185 pounds. Missed some time last year before the trade due to injury, but reports with the Pirates were excellent on his bat speed, ton of raw power, swing and miss risk as with any young international hitter. So previously a switch hitter, prioritized hitting right-handed recently, which is interesting. Good to make that move this early.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned, shortstop, you signed as a shortstop, looking to move to third base full-time. Stats I have are only from Dominican Summer League and some complex play, 237 career at-bats, 765 OPS. Anything else fans should know about Severino?
I think the one report that I did get, Wilbur, which was Wilbur, who also writes for the site, he attends most of the complex league games and stuff like that. He was at his first game that he played, and he hit a home run. So the power's there. You can see the power in the swing and hear the power. It's just I believe he was injured too, not too long after joining the Pirates. So like our sample size of him has been very limited. But I tell you what, that Bradenton infield for potentially this upcoming season looks very, very exciting if they decide to give him the jump up there. So he's definitely one to watch down there just because of the power. It's just those kind of kids right now at that level and that age, like it's almost like the Carlos Jimenez thing with almost all of them. Like he can be a major league starter, or he can also be like he might not get out of A ball. So he'll be definitely one to watch. He's very highly touted. It feels like across multiple sites. So a lot of sites like him. So He could be definitely one to watch this year.
Just with the age and the power
Yeah.
upside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's all just very projectable. Like a lot of people last year, and he's still high on my list. But Yordani De Los Santos, do you foresee Severino having a kind of come back to earth moment on that, where like Severino, it kind of feels like he's in that mold where he's going to potentially rise up the charts just based on projection. And then De Los Santos, I know I'm not mentioning him this week, but kind of felt like he didn't have a great season, had some health issues as well. Are there any comps between the two?
I feel like that Severino probably is more of a more of the power over the hit as opposed to De Los Santos. De Los Santos, he was 18 his entire time in Bradenton, so like I try not to judge too harshly based off of like the numbers and stuff like that we get back from him in those situations. But the exit velocity numbers were not very impressive based off of the kind of reports. I think it was Fangraphs that like threw him like he was like 10th, 11th, or 12th or something like that on Fangraphs,
Yep.
and they were talking about like his the barrel rate and was breaking records and stuff, like the age adjusted stuff like that. We didn't see that in Bradenton. He put up very, very, I guess the only way to say it's like bad exit velocity numbers in Bradenton. So like maybe he's still 18. He could still fill out on that. But at this point, I kind of feel like maybe Severino's more of the power over the hit, and maybe De Los Santos is a little more athletic with a little more contact and stuff like that. The power potential they say is there. We'll just have to kind of wait to see if it comes at this point.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm going to have to question where I have him in my top 20 now. But moving on to number 26, another trade deadline piece from last year. Hopefully I'm saying this right. Estuar Suaro, outfielder, 18-year-old switch hitter.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
That's as right as probably I would say it.
Yeah, okay. We are very good at this. All right. So he came over from the Padres, part of the return for G-Man Choi, Rich Hill, listed at 6'5", 180 pounds. Makes me immediately self-conscious. But he has some very strong raw tools. Another 2022 international signing. Again, not a huge sample size, 95 total games, all at rookie ball, 700 OPS in that time. But after the trade, went to Complex League, 58 plate appearances, even 12-12 strikeouts walk ratios. Again, very projectable, very tough to say definitively, but given his age, his size, you expect the strikeouts. Again, small sample. It's going to happen with these international signings. It's promising to see the potential with the plate discipline. Am I reading in too deep, or is he someone that you think is a set top 30 and could rise?
He's the kind of, so like I mentioned this too a lot with like Yordani last year, was like you know when you sign these international kids, you're really doing nothing but projecting, and there's like a certain look that you want that like you immediately gravitate to, and I think Suero is that kind of guy. It's like you look at him and like, yeah, that's what I want to. That's the kind of kid I want to sign, because when he fills out, when he grows, and when he reaches, adulthood and whatnot, he's going to be the guy with everything. Like they talk about his raw power, they talk about his speed, his potential to play center field. I think he was MLB Pipeline picks like a player every year who they think is going to break out, and I'm fairly certain that they picked SR Suero for that. So I think it was is it Kevin Alcantara, the outfielder in the Cubs system? And they put a lot of comps on him, and he's really starting to rise up the rankings and stuff like that for his length and his speed and stuff like that. So
okay,
he's definitely one of those guys that like has the kind of tools that you just kind of dream about for a baseball player.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll agree on that. I definitely don't follow other systems, so I'm not familiar with Alcantara or mostly just like the top prospects for other team
Yeah.
systems. And also, if anyone's watching on video, I've got my little dog in the room with me, so needed to tend to her for a second. But luckily, Murph was providing some really quality info on Swaro, if that's how you pronounce it. So, is it given that he's 18, is he someone who, like Severino, potentially gets an aggressive push to Bradenton for the upcoming season?
I think their kind of routes and all that stuff, and like it'd probably be nice to you could probably see I could probably see more of a scenario where like Severino starts in Bradenton, but like worst case scenario, maybe they start the year in an extended spring training. They get a couple weeks in the complex league, and then you kind of bump them up to Bradenton, kind of like what they did with De Los Santos. Let them work their way slowly to it. I mean, there's really no rush if you want to give them another year and stuff like that. They're both more in on the raw tools side of things right now. So it's one of those things like if something clicks, then yeah, you can see them working their way to Bradenton quick. But if they need like another year to kind of work things out, they could probably it wouldn't hurt them to stay in the complex all year. So
Sure. Could definitely see it. So pivoting number 25, another guy, raw tools, hasn't shown up yet, but it's definitely there. Tony Blanco Jr. They've got him listed first base, outfield. Like I said, this week is not all recent international signings, but it's going to be a good portion of it. So Blanco, top signing from 2022, 18, listed at 6'6", 243 pounds, just like beefy dude. Ton of power
yeah,
potential, obviously, but young, a lot of swing and miss. 40 games last season at DSL, 157 plate appearances, 59 strikeouts, 37.6% rate. Not great there. Did post a 10.8 walk rate. Big bat. Fangraphs has future grade on his power at 70. Definitely want that K rate to go down, batted ball events to go up. Is Blanco being overly cautious at the plate, or does he have a hole in his swing?
so I think so. Like it's sometimes the info that we get from the Dominican League, there it's few and far between that we get and all this. But I do remember listening to Baseball America, their podcast about the top 10 prospects in the system, and they were talking about Blanco. They basically said his exit velocity, he might have maybe the most raw power in the minors right now. I think they said like his exit velocity, he like averaged 92 miles an hour, but he probably has like a 30 grade hit tool. And if you're already having those kind of swing and miss issues in the Dominican League, where probably a good portion of the pitchers he's facing are never going to come to the United States, then there is probably some legitimate concern. But having him just on the power alone, I think is enough to carry him up most charts. And like if you have him, if anyone has him like ranked and rated and stuff like that, I don't blame you for it. Just because that power, if he's already averaging 92 miles an hour as far as exit velocity, that puts him like top tier, like 90th percentile and above as far as major league hitters. Like there are only a few major league hitters who do that kind of stuff, and we're talking about a 17-year-old kid in the Dominican. So the power's there. But if it's a 30 grade hit tool right now, I mean, obviously that can improve. But yeah, he's gonna live and die by the power kind of thing with that right now.
All right. And given that, being Dominican Summer League, not too much info we can glean from the raw numbers as far as like what he needs to improve. Is this a guy who, I mean, just based on the build and 6'6", 243, is he someone who, if he slimmed down, I don't want to like fat shame a prospect. I'm just saying, like, is this someone who needs to get more athletic, less move on kind of build?
I think he was. I think you're like they say they signed him, and I'm pretty sure when they signed him they said like outfielder, but I think he was always kind of heading towards like the first base kind of thing, first base only profile. So I don't know if it's a matter of him like, slimming down or anything like that. I think it's more of a matter of pitch recognition and just learning how to adjust at the plate to handle those kind of pitches. And like he'll see more of it when he comes to the United States. I would imagine that he's probably in the complex league this upcoming year. They'll probably protect him pretty well and kind of give him some playing time in here. The Pirates, they love doing like their backfield work with the prospects. So there's some times to where like, someone like Axioplast, who there's a lot of hype with him coming over. He didn't play as much, but like he was always at work at the complex and stuff like that. So I can kind of see a scenario with that with him, with Blanco, just to kind of get him adjusted to like learning how to recognize spin and that kind of stuff, and then really kind of let him loose maybe the following season, like in 2025 kind of thing.
All right. I mean, eager to see it. Like you said, one of the best power tools in the minors and any level of the minors, any system. So the hope is he gets that figured out. But we're going to move on to number 24, which is Charles McAdoo, currently listed second base, outfield. I think he's played a couple other positions there, but drafted 13th round, 2023 out of San Jose State. Went straight into low A Bradenton last year, 28 games, 114 plate appearances, triple slash of 302, 412, 510, walk rate just under 15%, strikeout rate of 19.3%, age 21 season, not a huge sample size. Like I mentioned with Seitler, he's playing against younger and likely inferior competition. However, he has a little bit more defensive flexibility. His line drive rate was just above 30%, 31.9. So I'm just asking you outright on this. Should we buy or sell on McAdoo?
So I actually really like the way that you phrase that, because one thing that I think I have learned over the last couple of years is that with these kind of kids, I probably don't buy into too much of what he's doing until I see it done in Altoona, which means that I'm not saying this year's kind of a toss away, but if he goes to Greensboro and hits 20 home runs, I'm probably not going to jump out of my seat and start banging the table for him, because I'm going to want to see it in Altoona at a more advanced level first, because like fool me once with Greensboro, shame on me. But like at this point, I think there's a very clear trend going on when it comes to Greensboro and the way that we evaluate our prospects at that level, or the way that the prospects are being evaluated, both on the hitting and pitching side. That being said, I didn't know too much about McAdoo whenever they first drafted him, and he came in and was just like raking. I think he got hits in like his first 5 or 6 games, and like first 8 or 9. Like he just started knocking the cover off the ball like immediately. And my first thought is, okay, well, he's a college player going to single A. That's probably not a big deal. And then I started doing a little more research for him for an article I wrote, and like he was a preseason All-American at second base going into the year. Like he there was a lot just off the pedigree and some of the stuff they were saying and the stuff he did would actually make me take a step back and think like, okay, well, I mean, maybe they're onto something with it, or did a bunch of teams miss by not taking him earlier and stuff like that. So I feel like there can be something there. It's just with the college kids, it's so hard after these last couple of years watching them in the system to get too excited for them until they get to Altoona and start doing it then. Because we've seen it too many times to where they get to Altoona and it's just a completely different game there, and you can tell that we hung on too tight to their numbers at Greensboro.
So is it a problem with college hitters? And I don't know, I can't speak to other organizations, but for the Pirates, a lot of the time they maybe have a couple days, a week or two at complex league after draft and then go into low A. Is it more advantageous to get them straight to Greensboro, where the competition is a little bit more comparable to their skill level? Or is it better to have them go in slowly, kind of get adjusted to playing almost every day? They play 3 days a week in college, rather than be able to gauge their skill level that quick.
I think when you look at them, like when you talk about after they immediately get drafted, like with McAdoo, like last year, I think Bradenton's a good place to start because you have the complex there. You have all these extra coaches and all these extra eyes there that if you and it's just about getting your feet wet, kind of feeling what pro ball feels like, what the day-to-day thing is. And then also there's all these other coaches here that can be like, okay, well, we're going to pull you out of Bradenton now. We're going to send you back to the complex, but that's just because we're going to work on a couple things. And then Greensboro is really their first chance to kind of get out on their own and then kind of do their own thing and do the day-to-day grind and stuff like that. So I like to start out in Bradenton with like the college kids and stuff like that. I don't think it stunts their development with it. I think it's more of a team collective thing as far as, okay, well, this is what they're struggling with. And it's up to the development staff and the player to come together to kind of find what they're getting stuck with when they get to Altoona and try to get over the hump. So.
But so because for a lot of organizations, the big jump is, at least it used to be, AA to AAA, and obviously AAA to the majors is like the biggest goal. Why is it so often happening that, and this isn't going to be related to any of the players we're talking about today, that they have such a drop off with these players going from Greensboro, and then when they move to Altoona, they just completely fall off? And I know hitter-friendly park. I think the Sally League is a very hitter-friendly league overall. But even outside of the home run, shouldn't the like ability to hit for doubles and hit for average in general be able to translate so that we're not having so many guys like you mentioned, Mason Martin, Matt Gorski, Matt Frazier, just a number of players who just drop off considerably in that?
I think it's when you look at it, the first real jump, like if you can pitch well in AA, there's generally a good chance that you can do it in the majors as well. Especially now when they started to condense the minors, they got rid of a bunch of rookie leagues and stuff like that. So now I just think it's AA is really and I think Charrington has said it too. Really, like once you can do it in AA, they feel pretty confident with you being able to do it in the majors. I know that's not his exact words, but it feels like that's the kind of vibe that I get whenever he talks about it. That like once you can do it in AA, you can do it in the majors, and that's just really the big jump. The pitchers are a lot more advanced there. They know what they're doing. You get a lot of like career organizational guys that have just been doing it for a very long time, and they just know how to pitch better, and they just know the ins and out of the game and how to get hitters out better. And they just, some of the hitters get up there and they get exposed for it, and they're just not making the adjustment that's needed. And that's, I mean, partially on, I don't want to say on the player, but like it's up to the pitching coaches and the organization to identify what's going on here and have them make the proper adjustments.
Yep, definitely a big jump overall, big development hurdle for these players and for these coaches to have them adjust overall. So I'm going to move on to number 23 on this list, which is another international signing, Shaylin Polanco, outfielder. So last international signing for this episode, Polanco, highly touted signing, 2021 class. Pirates gave him a $2.35 million bonus. Spent significant time on the injured list last year. Hasn't posted like blow you away numbers in the box score. 12 home runs, 303 plate appearances with shoulder issues, intermittently there is pretty nice to see. I'm getting some like Gregory Polanco flashbacks with the shoulder issues, but the strikeouts are a bit high, hugely athletic, and when healthy, really high ceiling. Fangraphs has him slated for Greensboro in 2024. What are your thoughts on Polanco, and will he start the season in Greensboro, given I think he had, 12 games last year? Something like that?
He missed the last couple months, I think
Oh
it
no,
was.
not
Like
12.
he came back. Yeah, he came back and played a game or two or something like that, I believe, and then got re-injured himself or something like that. Um, but when he was healthy, he was maybe one of the funnest players to watch in the system. Like if he had stayed healthy the entire season, he may not have got it because he went through like a pretty downward slope at one point. But like there are times where he was pacing towards like a 2020 season, and we're talking about like a 19-year-old in single A. So like the speed is
Yep.
there, the power he shows in flashes and stuff like that. Like you mentioned, there's a little swing and miss to his game. He's a really good defensive center fielder. You can make a case outside of maybe Matt Gorski, the best defensive center fielder in the system right now. Has played all three outfield positions as well. The arm's pretty good. For him, I feel like he's right there to maybe being able to take that next step as a prospect. It's going to come down to the swing and miss stuff. If he can make a little more contact, then that can really send him to the next level that we want to see from him.
Yeah, definitely hope to see, because like there's so much talk about him coming out of the international signing, and I think last season getting to see him, it was 70 games. I don't know why I said 12. That was way off. But definitely, are there any issues? Because I think he had multiple stints on the injured list. I don't know if they were all due to the shoulder. Are there any long-lasting concerns?
I haven't heard anything. I know one thing. He was originally injured. I believe he was sliding into second, and he came up, and you can tell he was in pain like immediately with it, and he left. But if I remember correctly, he stayed in the game until the end of the inning, and then they pulled him. So
Okay.
if that was the shoulder that he hurt there, I haven't heard anything about any long lasting thing with it. I guess we'll have to see going into next year. But
So a Polanco who injured his shoulder sliding into second. This is
yeah. I guess
a little
I
familiar.
just I might have triggered some fans with that one. My bad.
Well, because here's the thing. I said for years, when like back in the 2013, 2015 period, to Ed, my co-host who you know, that Polanco might have better long-term upside than Marte or McCutcheon at that time. And Ed always laughed it off, and he's still like, "Oh, you were so wrong about." And I was like, "Man, he was so athletic. If he didn't mess up his shoulder."
Oh yeah, I think I would have put myself in that boat too. That I think Gregory Polanco maybe had more upside than Marte, or like he could have approached like a McCutcheon type level. It's just sometimes they don't reach the level that they're supposed to, and then you have injuries like that too that further bring them down a notch or two.
Yep. And then they ended up playing overseas.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna get back to the present. Try to hope for the best on these prospects. Hope that I'm hitting a little bit better on these days with number 22. High floor with this guy, I think. It's Jack Brannigan, third baseman, 2022 third round pick out of Notre Dame. Posted solid numbers in 2023, 49 games in Bradenton with an 849 OPS. Jumped up to Greensboro, 173 plate appearances over 38 games. Had a 299, 382, 605 triple slash, 12 home runs. Strikeout rate was high, 33.5%. And then he went to the Arizona Fall League, looked very overmatched there. But the bat has pop. Defense at third is rated at or like among the best, at least in the system. AFL is kind of a mixed bag as far as like who you're facing. Do you believe in Brannigan's upside, or are the strikeouts too much of an issue as he moves up?
I think that Jack Brannigan could be, if he can get the strikeouts down a little bit, he has all the makings of a very, very good like backup utility infielder. But when I say like backup utility infielder, I'm talking like but elite defensively. You mentioned the third base. I think he's the best defensive shortstop in the system, just in general. And that's considering like anyone who's on like the 40-man roster kind of thing. I think he's the best defensive shortstop the Pirates have overall. The arm is incredible. He has great range. He has, I think this is the thing that shocked us the most. I remember Nola Jeffy, he writes on the site with this, talks, he's all over Twitter. We saw a Baseball America report talking about like double plus speed for him, and that just kind of blew us away. Like, you think about the power and the arm and stuff like that, but then when you sit back and watch him, like, I mean, his dad was a track athlete at Notre Dame, so he got some of the speed there. I just think he's you mentioned the high floor. I think if he cuts down the strikeouts just a little bit more, he's like the perfect backup middle infielder who can play all three positions and just really good at shortstop kind of thing. I think right now his natural position was shortstop originally. They moved him to third when he got to Notre Dame because they had someone else there, and then he just kind of stuck there. But his natural position has always been shortstop. Notre Dame actually recruited him as a shortstop. It just wasn't until he got there that they moved him. So his natural position is that, and it's starting to show now too. So
that'd be interesting if they do convert him back to shortstop. I don't know how many games, if at all, he played there last year, but going back to the speed, he almost had a 2020 season. He had 19 home runs and 24 stolen bases.
Mm-hmm. He played exclusively shortstop in the AFL. That's the only position that he played, and then he closed out the season in Greensboro after like Chang moved up. He played third some, but by the end of the season, he was majority of his playing time came at shortstop. So at this point, the only reason he doesn't open up, if he goes to Altoona this year, the only reason he isn't the opening day shortstop there is because they send Chang back to Altoona, which I assume he's going to be, and they want him to get more work there at shortstop. So that's the only thing that's keeping him from being the everyday shortstop at Altoona next year. And even then, I like him more as a shortstop than I do Chang.
Yeah, that'll definitely be interesting to see how that plays out. Because if long term he can be a shortstop and above average defensively and bring this power, like he potentially could move up the charts even faster on this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know
if the hit tool is going to allow him to start probably at the next level, but I do believe that he his ceiling's probably like you're probably looking more like a backup infielder, like I've mentioned on there,
like a Jared Triolo.
Yeah. So something like that. I think Brannigan has a stronger arm. He's more natural at shortstop than Triolo is, but so it's something along the lines of that.
And again, you talked about his arm. He was a relief pitcher at Notre Dame, like wildly athletic.
Yeah.
But let's finish up. Number 21 on my list is right-handed pitcher Owen Kellington. He's the first of the intriguing group of the 2021 draft class. I'll be talking about the others in the coming weeks, but Kellington taken in the 4th round out of U32 High School in Montpelier, Vermont. He was his state's 2021 Gatorade Pitcher of the Year. Injury issues limited him in 22, only 80 innings in Bradenton last year, 3.94 ERA, 90 strikeouts, some control issues, not uncommon, really his first taste of big league action. If he can stay healthy, there's some stuff to like, starting with his curveball, which has a lot of drop to it when it's on. Murph, final guy today, what can you tell me about Kellington?
I really like Kellington. I'm a really big Kellington guy. You mentioned the curveball. The curveball is really good. His changeup, I think, has plus potential. As long as the biggest thing with him is like want to see the fastball velocity creep up a little bit. He has great shape on it. The induced vertical break's really good. All the other metrics look really good on it, and he had some success with it up in the zone despite the velocity. It's just working on the command, and like if he can be a guy that can be 92-ish the majority of the time, like he's all of a sudden a guy in the system on there. Like you said, the curveball, he throws a slider. The changeup's really good. Started throwing a cutter later in the season to kind of offset the fastball, especially with the velocity and stuff. So I'm really big on Kellington. It's going to come down to the command, and if he can add a little bit with the fastball and keep that velocity through an entire season,
which we haven't really gotten too much as far as like an opportunity to see how he holds up. Given this system's proclivity for adding a sinker, is he someone who, because of the reduced velocity, they want to do that? Or you mentioned the two-seamer, which, like cutter, sinker, is somewhat similar.
I can see something like that. Like someone like Michael Kennedy, I noticed in some of the games that I saw with him, he'll throw like his four-seam up in the zone, at which, that has good movement and that, all the same stuff with that. The velocity isn't as, it's higher than Kellington's, but it isn't overly great. I mean, he's left-handed, so it's a little bit different, but he also in turn throws like a two-seamer, sinker, whatever you want to call it, down in the zone as well to kind of change the eye levels with the velocity and stuff. And he had a lot of success with it in the complex league last year. So maybe if you want, maybe that could be something that can work with Kellington as well. Have him throw the fastball up because he gets a lot of good late movement on it and stuff like that. And then kind of use because you could also throw the changeup off of the sinker as well, because they'll have like similar break and stuff like that. So that could be something that can work. I'm sure at his age and stuff like that, you can still kind of tinker around with some stuff and everything.
Yeah. I'm not a pitching coach. I have no idea what they're going to do. Hopefully I hit on at least some of these guys, and they you never know if they're going to make the majors, if they're even going to rise up through the system. Any guy who isn't being talked about enough, who's not on like top 30 lists, who you like?
There is one guy who, on the spot, one guy that I always like hyping up from, and I saw him play a lot in Bradenton, is Omar Alfonso. We talk about like Polanco and stuff like that, and his upside and everything like that. Alfonso put up elite contact numbers in Bradenton. He put up better exit velocity numbers than Polanco. He plays a really good defensive catcher and stuff like that. And he was also 19 years old playing in single A as well. So he's the type of guy, if you take like the exit velocity and the chase rate and some of the contact rates and stuff like that, and you do like a player A, player B kind of thing, between him and Polanco, and I think 90% of people will take probably higher than that. We'll take Alfonso's numbers over what Polanco did last year. So he's the guy that I'm really looking to he possibly making like a decent sized jump next year.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Really strong walk rates too. 16.5% in 52 games at Bradenton. Would like to see some of that power and that being a lefty, I think will show up in Greensboro, but I'm assuming he's going to stay at Bradenton.
I can see him starting in Bradenton again. He'll be 20 this year, so it's still young. Probably someone who starts and then makes like a mid-season jump up to Greensboro. It's just very good, and they had him playing some first base last year too, because they really liked Giovanni Planchart as well at catcher. So those two were splitting time at catcher. They just wanted to keep Alfonso's bat in the lineup, so they kicked him over to first base for a little bit. But he's a very capable catcher. Throughout, I think it was well over 30% of the attempted base stealers in Bradenton. So really solid catcher, solid hitter, 19 years old, plays a premium position. Just me personally, I really enjoy watching him play, and he's someone I'm really high on that I don't think anyone really talks about yet.
No, I had seen his name obviously going through roster resource, but wasn't someone who I had given too much time to. So I'm definitely going to have to take a second look. But that's going to wrap it up for all this week's episode. I'll be back with hopefully another guest for next week's episode talking about picks 20 through 11 for the ranked Pirates prospects. Thank you, Murph, for jumping on with me this week. If you don't already subscribe, get email notifications, Bucs On Deck. You guys are posting like 5 articles a day. I'm constantly getting stuff in my email about it. It's just a great resource for information. And you guys have just an awesome stash of writers there working for you. Bunch of friends of the show anyway, too. So mentioned the YouTube earlier, Anthony Murphy 338. Definitely check that out because you'll post videos all throughout the season for prospects. You do, I think, weekly recaps on like what's going on in the minor leagues for each team.
Yeah.
Definitely something that hopefully you're going to continue this year. I definitely enjoy getting those videos. And then, of course, follow him on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, _Murphy88. You can find me there at 412 Double Play. Continue listening to the show, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever you hear your podcasts. I know I mix it up when listening to my favorite podcasters, so subscribe so you get notified when we drop our new episodes. Check out the work for myself, some of the fellow podcasters at steelcity.com. I'll have that link below. We're also writing tons of articles as we're kind of building up our base there, getting busier with articles, busier than ever as the season's kind of ramping up. So from all of us here at the 412 Double Play Podcast, thank you for joining us, and let's go Bucs.